So listen to this. If you're one of those people who have been calling Doku a one-trick pony, consider this a gentle warning. Sooner or later, that one trick will bring down your favorite offender. The club you support, everyone will be on their knees begging him to stop. You may think that makes him predictable, but I dare say it makes him unstoppable. Just go back for a second and watch the great Arjen Robben pull off the same move over and over again. As Bruce Lee once said, "I fear not the man who practiced 10,000 kicks once, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." And that man is Jeremy Doku. When he drops his shoulder to the left and dashes to the right, it may seem almost rudimentary next to the magical skills of players like Vini Jr, Leroy Saner, Rafael Lea, and Quaradxcelia. In fact, according to the numbers themselves, those four are the best dribblers on the planet, all averaging around 3.5 successful take-ons every 90 minutes, except I left one name out of the list. Above those four, there is Jeremy Doku, with over 6 successful take-ons every 90. He is mathematically not just the most dominant one-on-one player in the world, he is almost twice as good as the second best, and it has been like that for a long time. Go back to his time in France, look at the stats, not even Neymar could step up to him. Check the list of the greatest dribblers in the history of the Euros, and in the top 10, alongside Ronaldo, Henry, Iniesta, and Zidane, Jeremy Doku, a 22-year-old who has barely even stepped foot in the tournament. But all this begs the question, how is he so good? Well, to say that he practiced that dribble 10,000 times would be a gigantic understatement. I mean, have you ever seen his older brother? The guy is a self-proclaimed street footballer, an ex-Anderlecht academy player who had to quit after multiple injuries, and he does the same dribble. In fact, he even told the press that Jeremy perfected that dribble right here in Borgerhout, every day on the street from early in the morning down to the moment the lights on the square went out. The kid has been practicing this one trick for over 15 years, and let me tell you, if you think he's scary now, you should see how he played when he was 12. After moving around from one tiny club to the other, at 7 years of age, the Beerschot scouts found him. And they may not be the biggest club, but trust me, their academy is out of this world. Alderweireld, Moussa Dembele, Nengelen, Vermaelen, Vertonghen, and Victor Wanyama all came out of there, and all went through the same process, 2 trials and 2 training sessions with the team before they decided whether to keep them. But for Doku, they opened an exception, going directly into a training session and getting called up for a match only to show up half an hour late, at which point he ran to the dressing room, opened his bag, and realized he had brought his brother's boots instead of his own. At just 16 years old, only a tad older than Lukaku, the youngest to play for Anderlecht in the 21st century, Doku played the first match of his career, immediately being labeled by the press as pure gold, even though his proper introduction into the team would be delayed until midway through the following season, as a whirlwind of managerial changes would see the club go through 6 managers in the space of a year and a half, only calming down after the arrival of Frankie Verkouteren. Regardless then, with Anderlecht trailing 2 goals behind against one of the smallest clubs in the league, in an act of desperation he subbed them in, and in 6 minutes not only did he get an assist, but then scored another, only to still come out of it with a defeat. No matter what, just 4 days later he was in the starting 11 scoring another decisive goal, earning his place and impressing enough that after only a few months he was getting nicknamed as the new Hazard, as rumors went around that Roberto Martinez planned to make him Belgium's secret weapon for the Euros. But it was at that moment that a pandemic came. Had Doku been called up then, he would have been the 3rd youngest in almost a century, but instead, just as he seemed ready to show himself off to the whole of Europe, he was first forced to stand around and watch as his entire world stood still for 5 months, and then forced to move too fast. In the first 2 months of the season, he got his first 2 minutes with the national team. 3 days later, he got his first start and immediately pulled off one of his signature dribbles to score his first. For those first 2 months he struggled. It wasn't even that he couldn't get a goal to save his life. At times, even his dribbling seemed to go out the window, so once the club went on a streak of 13 matches with only 1 win, the fans started to lose their patience, as it became more and more likely that they'd miss out on the European competitions. But then things finally clicked. With 9 matches left in the season, Doku finally opened his goal-scoring tally, and though he'd end up nearly breaking someone's ankle in that same match and getting hit with a 2-game suspension, that goal must have gotten him past some mental block, because he went out with the national team, scored and assisted twice, came back, scored in his first game after suspension, created 6 goal-scoring chances in the one after that, and then shocked the entire country by demolishing Bordeaux's defense, completing 12 dribbles in that one match, breaking the league's all-time record that belonged to Neymar. Coming up against him a week later in a match against PSG, and not only coming out of it with more completed dribbles than him and Di Maria put together, but terrorizing their defense so much that he got Kimpembe sent off. Somehow still finishing the season as the second player with the most dribbles completed behind only Mbappe, who got almost twice as much game time, leading him to claim that in my 5 years as a pro, I've never seen someone with so much power, which meant that no matter how poor he started being, his name ended up on Roberto Martinez's list, making him the youngest Belgian to play in the Euros since Enzo Schiffo in 1984. Still, there were no guarantees that he would play. Up to the quarterfinals, the only time he'd stepped on the pitch was in a meaningless match once he had already qualified to the knockouts, but then Martinez started him against Italy, and not only did he win the penalty for Belgium's only goal, but he completed 8 dribbles, the third highest tally in history behind only Zidane and Hazard, getting Thierry Henry to tell the press that when you're one-on-one with him, there's only one thing left to do: pray. Suddenly, he was being shortlisted for the Golden Boy Award. His market value was being reported at 50 million. There were transfer rumors everywhere, but again, Loco chose to stay, determined to prove that he could carry Rennes on his back, but instead, he was hit with one of the most devastating injury-riddled seasons I've seen. First came his hamstring, then his knee twice, the hamstring again, and finally his calf, missing out on 39 matches. Knowing what happened to his brother, I can't even imagine how scared he was that this could be the end, and still, would you believe me that when the next season started, though he was still unable to play for the full 90, Rennes handed them the number 10 shirt and put full confidence in him as their new star player. That even with 2 more injuries in the first 3 months of the season, he still got a call up to the World Cup in December. Anyone could see it was a matter of time before the stars aligned for him. So in February 2023, Loco played his first full 90 after 644 days struggling with his fitness, and though the next month he injured his hamstring again, once he made it back for good. With Rennes in 6th, about to miss out on the European competitions on his first start, he opened the scoring with a great solo run, then scored another to take the win. 2 weeks later, with their match tied at halftime, Loco put them in front with a crazy volley, then scored yet another great solo run. Then 2 assists 15 days later and a third solo run, and they came after that. This time all the way from his own half to close out the season with 5 goals in the last 8 matches, as well as a measly 2 assists, considering he had created 16 goal-scoring chances over that period. But regardless, what mattered the most had been achieved. He had dragged Rennes all the way up to 4th, the second highest finish in their history, earning them qualification to the Europa League. Even though Jeremy Doku improved in the final 2 months of the season and caused Real Madrid so much trouble that some fans claimed they would have won the match if Pep hadn't substituted them, not to mention that he dominated every dribbling opportunity at the Euros despite Belgium's appalling performance, it is important to wonder if he will ever be able to stay fit given his powerful acceleration and unpredictable twisting and turning. As his former manager once said, if he keeps playing the way he does, he will inevitably exhaust himself.